Welcome to Second Life Chronicles. Today we bring you a story of a forgotten princess, born in silence and raised behind cold palace walls, a tale of sorrow, courage, and the warmth that can grow even in the darkest places. I was born inside the coldest part of the imperial palace, a place known as the Cold Palace. It was where the emperor sent his forgotten concubines and somehow his forgotten daughter as well. From the moment I cried my first cry, the chill of that place wrapped around my life like a curse. My mother, Lady Vin, once a favored consort, had fallen from grace before I was born. They said she died of illness, but no one dared to speak of her again. All that was left of her was me, the sixth princess, a title that meant nothing in that forsaken corner of the palace. The Cold Palace was silent except for the soft voices of two women who cared for me, my wet nurse, Nanny Nu, and a young maid named Xiao Tui. They were my only family. The other concubines, who had been exiled there, were strange women, forgotten, eccentric, and sometimes cruelly humorous. They liked to play mahjong through the night, laughing bitterly as if the tiles could replace the life they once had. Sometimes they tied my hair. Sometimes they argued, and sometimes they looked at me with eyes that saw a ghost of their own lost dreams. When I was 5 years old, Nanny Nu fell ill. The rain fell gently that day, and I remember how she gripped my small hand, her voice trembling. "Little princess," she whispered, "I must go now. From now on, you must take care of yourself." I didn't understand what she meant. Her smile was pale and forced. "Don't cry," she said softly. "I'm only going to serve a noble one, your mother, Lady Vin, in heaven." I froze, staring at her face, trying to understand. If she goes to heaven, I thought, then who will stay with me? The thought struck like lightning. I clung to her, crying, "Nanny, don't go. I don't want to be alone." But her hand grew cold. Her breath stopped, and no matter how I called her, she would not answer again. The palace was silent except for my sobs. Xiao Tui burst into the room, her hair soaked by the rain, holding a pouch of medicine. When she saw Nanny Nu's body, she froze the medicine falling from her hands with a dull sound. After a moment, she rushed to the bedside, testing the nanny's breath, but it was too late. Her cold face flushed red with grief, and she whispered, "Old fool, why couldn't you wait a little longer? I begged everywhere for this medicine." Her voice broke, and she turned on me harshly, wiping the tears from my face. "Don't cry. Crying won't bring her back. If you miss her, just look up at the sky. She'll see you there." I looked up through my tears. The ceiling seemed endless. "You're lying," I shouted. "There's no one in the sky. No mother, no sister, no nanny." Xiao Tui's eyes glistened. I said, "She can see you," she whispered. "Not that you can see her." Her words made me cry even harder. That night, the rain poured down in sheets. Xiao Tui carried me to my bed, trembling as she wrapped me in blankets. "Don't die, little princess," she murmured. "Please don't die too." Then she rushed out into the storm to find the imperial physician. But the guards outside the Cold Palace were cruel. "Going out again, girl," one of them sneered, blocking her path. "The dead in there don't need a doctor." She knelt in the mud, begging them. "Please, the princess has fainted. Let me fetch the physician, then do whatever you want with me." Her forehead struck the ground again and again until it bled, but the guards only laughed. When they reached to grab her, a sharp sound broke through the rain, a brick striking one guard's head. A calm, cold voice followed. "Since when has the palace grown such filthy dogs?" 3 women stood there, their gowns soaked yet regal, noble faces untouched by fear. The guards dropped to their knees at once. "Your graces, Lady Lin, Lady Wei, and Lady Jen." They trembled as the one called Lady Lin narrowed her eyes. "From today, this Cold Palace is ours, and the next time I see your hands on a servant girl, I'll have them cut off." That was the night everything changed. From that night onward, the Cold Palace was no longer the same. Where once there had been only silence and rot, there was now laughter, light, and a strange kind of warmth. The 3 women who arrived, Lady Lin, Lady Wei, and Lady Jen, were not ordinary concubines. Each of them had once stood high in the emperor's favor, and each had fallen for the same reason they refused to bow to the endless schemes of the inner court. Now exiled to the cold palace, they carried with them a sense of quiet rebellion. I awoke to the sound of soft voices and the warmth of a gentle hand resting on my forehead. When I opened my eyes, 3 faces looked down at me. They were beautiful in different ways. Lady Lynn, calm and elegant, with eyes that held both pride and melancholy. Lady Wei, whose gentle smile could melt the frost from stone. And Lady Jen, bright and fiery, her every movement carrying the boldness of someone born to command. "This poor child," Lady Wei whispered. "How could anyone leave a princess here? She's the emperor's daughter." "After all," Lady Lynn murmured. "But it seems he's forgotten she exists." Lady Jen pouted. "I don't even like children, but this one's pitiful. Someone fetch the porridge before it gets cold." When they saw my eyes open, Lady Jen quickly pressed a candy into my hand. "Here. Sweet things make sadness go away." I hesitated, then placed it in my mouth. The sugary taste spread across my tongue, my first candy ever. It tasted like warmth, like Nanny New's embrace. "See," Lady Jen said cheerfully, "she likes it." Lady Lynn turned her head, wiping a tear I wasn't supposed to notice. I tugged at her sleeve and whispered, "Please don't cry. I'm not sad anymore. I just miss my nanny." My words made her cover her face, crying harder. "Heaven help me," she muttered. "I'll strangle that heartless emperor myself." Lady Wei quickly shushed her. "Careful, the walls here still have ears." Then she lifted me gently and fed me spoon by spoon. The porridge was warm, and the kindness in her eyes made my chest ache. From that day on, the 3 of them became my world. I was told to call them Mother Lynn, Mother Wei, and Mother Jen, but I preferred to call them Auntie. They taught me songs, stories, and even how to play mahjong, though Mother Jen said I was too young to gamble. The cold palace, once a place of exile, turned into a small world filled with laughter. Sometimes I would catch the 3 women sitting together under the old willow tree, whispering about the past. They often laughed, but their laughter carried the weight of broken dreams. Mother Lynn was the most serious of them all yet. One morning, she shocked us by pulling the old tree from the ground entirely. "If we're going to live here," she declared, "we need a swing." Mother Wei fetched a saw. Mother Jen brought a rope, and soon they built a crooked little swing that creaked whenever the wind blew. When they set me upon it, the world blurred with motion and light. For a brief moment, I felt as if I could touch the sky, the same sky where Nanny New had gone. But joy in the palace never lasted long. That evening, the rope snapped, sending me tumbling into the dirt. The others rushed to my side, horrified, while Mother Jen scolded the air. "Who tied this thing like that? I'll punish myself." I burst into tears, not from pain, but because their care made me feel something I hadn't known before: belonging. The next morning, I wanted to thank them. I crept into the kitchen and tried to make corn cakes, just like Nanny New had once taught me. Flour covered my hands and smoke filled the air. Xiao Tui groaned. "Princess, you'll burn the kitchen down. And when did you ever cook for me, huh?" I giggled and smeared dough across her face. "There. Now you're as pretty as a flower." She shrieked, chasing me around the kitchen until both of us were covered in black soot. Just as we were laughing, the loudest, the door opened, and there stood the 3 noble ladies. For a moment, silence hung in the air, and then they burst out laughing. "Oh, heavens," Lady Jen said between giggles. "Look at these 2. Only their teeth and eyes are visible." Lady Wei wiped a tear from her cheek. "Go wash up and bring those cakes out. Let's see what kind of royal feast we're having today." When they tasted my misshapen cakes, they smiled as if they were the finest delicacy in the world. "Our little princess is growing up," Mother Lynn said softly, her voice thick with emotion. I beamed, proud and happy, but the peace of that morning was soon shattered. The door of the cold palace slammed open. A sharp, shrill voice rang out, "By order of His Majesty, the Imperial Consort. Ta Uyen arrives." The 3 women stiffened. Lady Jen's eyes narrowed. "That poisonous snake again," she hissed. Into our quiet world stepped a woman glittering with jewels and arrogance, her perfume so heavy it made the air thick. She looked around, curling her lip. So this is where the forgotten live. How quaint. Her gaze landed on the tray of corn cakes. Oh, corn cakes, even my dog wouldn't eat such filth. Her words burned. I looked up at her, trembling. Then, I made something that even dogs won't eat. My small voice quivered. Do my aunties hate me now? Lady Lin, Lady Wei, and Lady Jen rose in unison, their eyes blazing. Lady Jen stepped forward, first, her voice sharp as ice. Funny, I was wondering where that foul stench came from. Turns out it's just you. The air in the cold palace turned to fire. Lady Jen stood tall, her smile thin and deadly. You say even your dog wouldn't eat these cakes? Of course not. Your dog eats from the same dish as you does in it. How could such a noble creature stoop to common food? Before anyone could react, she struck the imperial consort across the face with a resounding crack that echoed through the courtyard. Taoyuan staggered backward, her jeweled hairpin tilting crookedly as she clutched her cheek eyes wide with disbelief. You dare strike me," she hissed. Lady Wei crossed her arms, her voice calm but cutting. "If you want to report this to the Emperor, go ahead. But remember, he has many concubines. He might not even remember your name." I stood frozen, eyes wide, my small hands trembling. The 3 women I loved most looked like fierce goddesses. Lady Lin placed a hand on Lady Jen's shoulder and said coolly, "That's enough. She's not worth your anger." Then with an almost casual tone, she turned to me. "Come, my little princess. You've worked hard on these cakes. Let's eat them together." But Taoyuan wasn't done. Rage twisted her face as she pointed at me. "So this is it, then. You're hiding your bastard child here. Whose brat is she? Yours, Lin Chiao Ingyi, or perhaps one of your lovers from before you were exiled?" The room went still. Lady Lin's expression hardened, the calm in her eyes turning to steel. "You dare," she whispered. I could feel the tension like a storm in the air. Taoyuan lunged forward, grabbing my arm so tightly it hurt. "I'll show His Majesty what filth you've been hiding." She never finished. Lady Lin's foot struck out swift as lightning, sending her sprawling onto the floor. "If you're unwell," she said icily, "go see the imperial physicians. Don't bring your sickness here." Taoyuan screamed, scrambling up. "You'll regret this. I'll tell the Emperor everything." But none of the 3 women looked frightened. Lady Wei knelt beside me, checking the red marks on my arm. "Does it hurt?" she asked softly. I shook my head, though tears filled my eyes. Lady Lin's face softened. "Don't cry, sweetheart. A person's worth isn't decided by what others say." That night after the incident, I overheard them speaking in low voices. If she really goes to the Emperor, Lady Wei said he might remember the 6th princess. Lady Jen sighed. And then, what if he decides to care? Fine. If not, he might simply erase her for good. Lady Lin was silent for a long time before she answered. "Then we'll make sure he remembers her in the right way." The next morning, they dressed me in clean silks, combed my hair into twin buns, and even dabbed a bit of rouge on my cheeks. I looked into the mirror and barely recognized the girl staring back. Lady Lin smiled faintly. "You look perfect. If the Emperor does appear, he'll see what he lost." And he did. The heavy gates of the cold palace creaked open later that day. A deep, commanding voice echoed through the courtyard. "His Majesty arrives." I froze, unable to breathe. Behind him, as expected, stood Taoyuan, her expression twisted with spiteful triumph. When the Emperor entered, sunlight struck the gold threads of his robe, making him seem almost unreal. He was tall, his presence filling every inch of space, his face calm but unreadable. I had never seen him before yet. Something in my chest knew this was my father. I did what my aunts had taught me. I dropped to my knees, pressing my forehead to the cold floor. "Your daughter, Jia Ni, greets Father Emperor." Taoyuan shrieked. "She dares call you father who allowed this impudent brat." Her words cut off when the emperor's hand lashed out, shoving her aside. His voice was icy. Silence. Then he turned to me, his tone softening. What did you say your name was? Gianni, I whispered, the sixth princess. His gaze lingered on me for what felt like forever. The hard lines of his face softened, and a flicker of pain crossed his eyes. You look just like her, he murmured. Your mother? My small voice trembled. Mother told me I look like you. That made him laugh quietly, though there was sadness in it. He knelt down and touched my cheek. Do you fear me, little one? I shook my head. No, you're my father. Why should I be afraid? He drew me into his arms. For the first time, I felt the weight and warmth of a father's embrace. It was different from my mother's gentle touch, firmer, colder, yet somehow comforting. I wanted to tell him everything about Nanny knew about my life in the cold palace, but all that came out was, it's not that cold here anymore. My aunties keep me warm. The emperor's expression darkened. His eyes swept across the cracked walls, the broken tiles, and the damp floors. You've lived here all this time, he asked quietly. Lady Lynn lowered her gaze, her voice calm but laced with quiet fury. By your decree, your majesty. He said nothing for a long time, then finally spoke. You will not stay here another day. He rose to his full height, holding me in his arms. You will live in the Hua Yang Palace from now on. A princess deserves better than this prison. As we left the cold palace, I looked back over his shoulder. My three aunties stood together watching me go. I gave them a small secret wink, and they each raised a thumb, smiling through their tears. I didn't understand then, but that moment was the beginning of everything. From that day, my life changed completely. The Hua Yang Palace was vast and filled with light, a world so different from the dim corridors of the cold palace that it felt almost unreal. Servants bowed wherever I passed, calling me Your Highness. But even as I wandered through marble halls and perfumed gardens, a part of me still longed for the laughter and warmth of that small, broken courtyard where my three mothers waited. Lady Lin Lady Wei and Lady Jen were allowed to follow me out of exile. The emperor granted them titles again, though lesser than before, and permitted them to live within the Hua Yang Palace. To the rest of the court, it seemed like mercy. But to us, it was a promise we would never be separated again. The palace, however, was a dangerous place. Every smile hid a dagger, every word a trap. My mothers taught me how to survive it, to bow when I must, to speak only when spoken to, and to never show fear. Kindness. Lady Lynn said one night is precious, but here it must be guarded like a jewel. When I was presented before the Empress, she sat high upon her golden seat, her face pale with weariness. Her eyes softened as she studied me. So you are the little one from the cold palace, she said quietly. Do you resent me for leaving you there? I shook my head. No, Your Majesty. Nanny said you sent food and clothes when no one else remembered me. I'm grateful. Her lips curved faintly, the ghost of a smile. You are your mother's daughter indeed. She touched my hair, and for a moment I thought I saw tears glisten in her eyes. May heaven protect you, child. After that meeting, the Empress often summoned me to her quarters. Sometimes she would simply hold my hand and ask me about my lessons or tell me stories from her youth. To the outside world, she was the Empress, serene, unreachable. But in those moments, she was simply a woman longing for warmth in a cold empire. Yet peace in the palace was fragile. My older sisters, the other princesses, regarded me with suspicion. They had never heard of a sixth princess before and whispered that I was a fraud, a servant's child who had tricked the emperor. One day, as I walked through the study hall, a jade inkstone flew across the room and struck my forehead. The pain was sharp, but the laughter that followed hurt more. It was my third sister, the proud, spoiled daughter of the imperial consort. Watch where you walk, little maid, she sneered. Or perhaps you think you're royalty now. Before I could answer, Father's voice thundered from the doorway. What is the meaning of this? Everyone dropped to their knees. The emperor strode in his gaze, sweeping across the room. When he saw the bruise forming on my forehead, his expression darkened. Who did this? I wanted to protect her, but he was already staring at my third sister. She trembled, unable to speak. It was an accident, she stammered. An accident. His tone cut like ice. You forget yourself. From this day forward, you are confined to your quarters for a month. Reflect well on what it means to be a princess. She burst into tears as he turned away, lifting me into his arms. You must tell me if anyone dares harm you again, he said softly. You are my daughter. Never forget that. That night, my mothers fussed over me, applying ointment and muttering curses under their breath. If I catch that girl, Lady Jen fumed, I'll feed her my shoe. Lady Wei scolded her gently, but her hands trembled as she dabbed at my wound. Lady Lin only sighed. No need to fight fire with fire, she said. The Emperor's anger burns hot but dies quickly. We must protect her quietly. I fell asleep to the sound of their voices, safe and loved. But the palace had long memories, and the seeds of jealousy never stayed buried. Months later, at a spring gathering in the imperial gardens, I stood beside my mothers dressed in a crimson gown they had sewn with their own hands. The garden was filled with laughter and music, noble ladies sipping tea courtiers reciting poems, when I heard a shout. Look, the little princess has fallen into the pond. Cold water swallowed me whole. I flailed helplessly, my cries muffled by the surface above. The shock froze my limbs. I thought I would sink forever. Then through the blur of water, arms wrapped around me, strong and trembling. When I was pulled out, gasping and shivering, I saw the face of Lady Wei, soaked to the bone, her hair undone, clutching me, as if afraid to let go. My child, she whispered, her voice breaking. Don't you dare leave me too. I later learned she had mistaken me for the fourth princess, who wore the same red gown that day. Yet even when she realized, she held me tighter, crying in relief. It didn't matter whom she had meant to save, she had saved me. Word of the accident spread quickly. The Emperor, furious, punished the third prince for shoving me, and the imperial consort was stripped of favor. For a brief time, the palace fell quiet again. But that peace came at a cost. My mothers had drawn too much attention. The emperor began visiting the Huayang Palace often, and though his visits were kind, the whispers returned. Jealous voices accusing Lady Wei of seducing him, of stealing favor meant for others. One evening, Lady Lin gathered us in her chamber, her expression solemn. This can't continue, she said. If the emperor's affection grows, others will strike. Wei, you must be careful. Lady Wei smiled faintly. I know, but if I can bear this to keep Jiani safe, I will. The next morning, she greeted the emperor with tea, and by that night she was summoned to his chambers. From then on, she was no longer Lady Wei. She was Venerable Consort Wei, the emperor's favored concubine. From that night forward, everything changed once more. The Huayang Palace, which had once been our quiet refuge, began to fill with gifts, visitors and whispers. Silk screens and golden lanterns adorned the halls, and the fragrance of rare incense drifted through the air. My mother smiled for my sake, but I could see the unease hidden behind their eyes. Lady Lin was the first to speak what we all feared. Favor is a double-edged sword, she murmured as she brushed my hair one morning. The higher one climbs, the colder the air becomes. Lady Jen tried to laugh it off. Oh, let her enjoy it. For once, someone we love isn't suffering. Isn't that something to celebrate? But her laughter was brittle. When father came to visit, his gaze lingered on Lady Wei, now consort. Way longer than before, she served him tea with gentle hands, her voice calm, her smile like spring sunlight. I noticed how his expression softened when she spoke, how the lines on his face eased as he listened. It should have made me happy, and yet my heart felt heavy. That night, Lady Lin handed her a small black bowl of bitter-smelling medicine. Drink this, she said softly. Lady Wei looked at her questioningly but didn't hesitate. She drank it all, even though her eyes filled with tears from the taste. It will protect you, Lady Lin whispered. There are many ways to survive in the palace. Sometimes the safest way is not to give birth. Lady Wei smiled faintly. You always think ahead, Sister Lin. I trust you. Days turned to weeks, and the emperor's visits grew more frequent. The Empress, still gracious, said nothing, but her silence was sharper than anger. One evening she invited all the concubines to the Hall of Harmony. The air was thick with perfume and tension. "Let us toast," she said with a faint smile, "to peace in the inner court." Everyone lifted their cups except one voice broke the stillness. Peace. The sneer came from Ta Uyen, who had somehow regained a minor title and was determined to make herself heard again. "Some of us seem to find peace only in another woman's bed." The room went deathly quiet. Lady Lin's fan snapped open. "It's dangerous to speak nonsense, Ta Tiep Dong," she said calmly. "You might choke on your own poison." But Lady Wei merely bowed her head. "If my devotion to His Majesty offends you," she said quietly, "then your quarrel is not with me, it's with the Emperor's heart." That silenced everyone. The Empress's eyes flickered unreadable, and then she laughed softly. "Well spoken, Consort Wei. Truly you have learned how to survive this place." When we returned to the Huayang Palace, Lady Wei sat before the mirror, removing her jewelry one piece at a time. "Do you think she hates me?" she asked without looking up. Lady Lin paused. "She pities you." Lady Jen scoffed. "Pity, hate, jealousy, it's all the same poison." I stood beside them, holding her comb. "Mother Wei." I whispered, "Why do you have to be strong all the time?" She smiled, her reflection soft and sad. "Because strength is the only way love survives here, my child." Winter came early that year. The Emperor spent most of his nights at the Huayang Palace, and soon the jealousy of others turned to quiet conspiracy. Servants whispered of accidents, poisoned tea, loose steps, broken railings. Lady Lin began checking every dish herself before I ate. Then one morning she received a sealed decree. By the Emperor's order, Consort Wei was to move to a new residence closer to his chambers. It was a sign of ultimate favor and of separation. She came to me that evening, kneeling to meet my eyes. "Jia Ni," she said softly, "you must be brave for me. Even when you can't see me, I'll be watching." I threw my arms around her, refusing to let go. "You can't leave. You said we'd always stay together." Her hands trembled as she stroked my hair. "In the palace forever doesn't exist, my love. But our hearts, they'll always find each other." Lady Lin turned away, hiding her tears. Lady Jen bit her lip until it bled. We stood there in silence, the sound of snow falling faintly outside. And then she was gone. For days, the palace felt hollow. The warmth of her laughter was replaced by whispers and rumors. When word came that Consort Wei had fallen ill, Lady Lin went pale. "Ill," she repeated, or silenced. They wouldn't let us see her. No one did. Days turned to weeks, and every petition for permission was ignored. One cold morning, an imperial messenger arrived, his face solemn, his robe damp with frost. He bowed low before Lady Lin and Lady Jen. By order of His Majesty, he said, Consort Wei has passed away in her sleep. My world stopped. I don't remember much after that, only the sound of Mother Lin screaming, of Mother Jen collapsing beside her, and of my own voice breaking as I called her name again and again. But no matter how loud I cried, she never answered. In the end, they allowed us a single night to keep vigil by her coffin. I sat beside her pale, still face, my fingers clutching hers. "You said you'd always watch me," I whispered. "So watch me now. I'll grow up strong, just like you." Years later, when I was older, I often walked through the imperial gardens where the snow once fell that night. The palace still glittered with gold, still whispered with secrets. But in the quiet wind, I sometimes heard her voice, soft, warm, unbroken. Life in the palace taught me many things: how fragile love can be, how power corrupts even the purest hearts, and how those who shine brightest often burn first. Yet it also taught me that kindness once given never truly dies. Because even in the coldest palace, love, like spring, finds a way to bloom again. Thank you for listening to Second Life Chronicles. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment to support the channel.